All right, Warriors fans, let's dive into what's been going on around Golden State because there's a lot of noise, plenty of speculation, and of course a good amount of drama around Jonathan Kuminga and his future with the team. Over the last few weeks, we've heard from ownership, from Steve Kerr, from Stephen Curry, and even for Draymond Green. Now it's time to add another voice into the mix, and this time it comes from Brandon Podziemski, who's been asked directly about where things stand with Kuminga and what all of this means for the locker room dynamic heading into another season. Podziemski made it clear that everyone in the locker room understands what the media does, that it's their job to pick apart situations, create storylines, and stir things up in order to get people talking. He stressed that regardless of what ultimately happens with Kuminga, whether he stays or whether the front office decides to finally make a move, it doesn't change the way the team looks at him as both a person and a player. Pod emphasized that the Warriors players, to a man, want Kuminga in Golden State. That is the hope, that is the point, and that is where the locker room stands. But of course, when someone says something like, "We all want him to be in Golden State," fans and analysts immediately begin to wonder if that is just player speak or if there's a real push from the roster to convince management to hang on to him no matter what. After all, we didn't really hear Stephen Curry make that exact statement. We didn't hear Draymond come out and phrase it in those words. Even Steve Kerr, who has often been careful with his language, avoided putting things that strongly. Podziemski saying it might not carry the same weight as Curry or Draymond. But it does show you that among the younger core of players, there's a strong desire to keep Kuminga around because they see themselves as the next era of Warriors basketball. And that's a big piece of the puzzle here. The organization clearly held back both Kuminga and Podziemski in trade talks, even when big names were on the table. A year ago, when conversations around players like Paul George and Lauri Markkanen were being floated, the front office made it clear that Kuminga was not someone they were just going to give away, and they also made it clear that Podziemski was firmly in their long-term plans. That kind of protection from trade talks tells you what Joe Lacob and the rest of the front office think of these two players. They see them as part of the bridge from the current championship core into whatever the next phase of Warriors basketball is going to look like when Curry, Clay, and Draymond eventually move on. But here's the reality. Kuminga's camp has been frustrated for a while. They feel like his role hasn't matched his potential, that he has been treated more like a role player than the budding star he wants to be, and that if he is ever going to become an all-star, it's probably not going to happen in Golden State. That's the friction. The team doesn't want to give him up for a player who won't move the needle, but Kuminga doesn't want to keep being asked to wait his turn. It's the kind of standoff that can only last for so long before something has to give. Podziemski, for his part, is doing what he can to control his own path. He said plainly that his job is to be the best version of himself, to improve every offseason, and to make sure he's ready to deliver when called upon. And honestly, that's exactly what the Warriors need from him right now. Because if you look at this offseason, Golden State has not made any flashy signings. They haven't gone out and brought in a star. Outside of the Jimmy Butler trade from back in February, the team has been pretty quiet. That means they're going to need their young guys, Podziemski in particular, to take a big leap forward this year. Last season we saw flashes from him. He got more comfortable with his three-point shot, his volume went up, and when he returned from that abdominal injury in the middle of the season, he really started to find his rhythm. After the calendar flipped into 2025, he looked like a completely different player. He was confident, aggressive, and playing with the kind of energy that made him stand out. But then came the postseason, and that's where the struggles came back. His efficiency dropped, the outside shot wasn't falling. And when Stephen Curry was sidelined, Podziemski wasn't able to fill that scoring gap the way Golden State desperately needed him to. And that's where the pressure comes in. Joe Lacob has gone on record calling Podziemski a future all-star. That's a huge statement to make, and now the expectation is that he starts to show more consistency, more reliability, and more of that next-level jump. Nobody is asking him to go out there and average 25 points per game. But if he can give you something in the ballpark of 17 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists, and his trademark hustle plays, taking charges, diving for loose balls, doing the dirty work, then he's going to be the type of player who not only helps the Warriors this season, but becomes a long-term building block. The problem, of course, is that everything right now feels like it's hanging in limbo because of Kuminga. The roster is already starting to take shape with the expected additions of Al Horford, D'Anthony Melton, and Gary Payton II. Those moves give Golden State more depth, more defense, and some veteran presence, but they don't drastically change the ceiling of the team. That's why so much weight falls on guys like Podziemski to become more than just a role player. He needs to be one of those players who can swing games, who can create energy, and who can give the Warriors a different look when Curry isn't on the floor. Now, the question becomes, is Podziemski ready for that kind of responsibility? He's shown glimpses, but glimpses don't win playoff series. Golden State needs consistency. They need him to not only keep developing as a shooter, but also to trust himself as a playmaker, as someone who can create looks for others and not just rely on Curry or Draymond to handle the offense. And remember, this is only going to be his third year. Expectations might feel heavy, but if the front office is already talking about him as a future all-star, then the leash is going to be shorter than it would be for most young players. So when Pod says the team wants Kuminga in Golden State, maybe it's just the usual player line. Or maybe it's more than that. Maybe it's the younger generation of Warriors trying to make sure their voices are heard in the middle of all the chaos. And that might be exactly what the franchise needs right now. All right, let's pick things back up because while all eyes are glued to the Jonathan Kuminga situation and Brandon Podziemski's development, the other major storyline that can't be ignored is free agency. The Warriors are at a crossroads. They're not in a position to throw big money around. They're deep in the tax. And every single move they make comes with the weight of not only the salary cap, but also the looming pressure of keeping this team competitive in the short term, while also building a future that doesn't collapse the moment Stephen Curry finally slows down. That means free agency, even at the vet minimum level, becomes absolutely critical. Now, the front office has already put themselves in line for a few key additions. By all accounts, Al Horford, D'Anthony Melton, and Gary Payton II are expected to join the roster. Technically, some of those are still verbal agreements, but let's be honest, everyone around the league is treating them as done deals. Horford's arrival is especially interesting because it's not just a one-year patch-up. Early reports suggest it will be a 2-year deal with a player option, which means the team is committing to him for at least this season with the possibility of one more if he decides he has gas left in the tank. At his age, every year feels like a question mark, but Horford has shown he still has enough to contribute in meaningful minutes, and Golden State is betting on his leadership and his ability to space the floor as a stretch big. D'Anthony Melton is another intriguing piece because he gives Steve Kerr another defensive weapon, someone who can slide into different backcourt matchups and take pressure off Curry when needed. He's not a flashy player, but his versatility fits the Warriors system. Adding Gary Payton II, who is already a known commodity in the Bay Area with his energy, defensive instincts, and ability to change the tempo of a game, and you start to see what the front office is going for. They're building depth. They're bringing in veterans who can give you steady minutes, and they're trying to shore up the rotation around the edges without making a massive swing. But the big question hanging over all of this is whether that's enough. Because when you look at the Western Conference, it's stacked. You have teams with multiple all-stars, deep benches, and plenty of firepower. Golden State, as it currently stands, doesn't have the kind of overwhelming roster that screams championship contender. They still have Steph, they still have Draymond, they still have the culture, but the gap between them and the top is wider than it used to be. That's where the idea of adding another piece from the free agent pool comes into play. One name that has come up is Malik Beasley. Now, Beasley's situation is complicated because of the investigation last season around gambling and point-shaving rumors. Those charges have been dropped, and he's been cleared of wrongdoing, but the cloud of that situation has followed him. Still, you can't ignore the production. He shot 40% from 3 on high volume last season, averaging 16 points per game. On a Detroit team that didn't have much offensive firepower, he was often the second-best scoring option. That type of shooting is always valuable. And for a team like the Warriors that thrives on spacing and ball movement, adding another consistent floor spacer could be a major boost. The problem is cost. Beasley is looking for something above the veteran minimum, and Golden State simply doesn't have the flexibility to overpay, especially with the Kuminga situation still unresolved. teams like New York, Cleveland, and Detroit have shown more serious interest and have the financial ability to give him what he wants. For the Warriors, it feels like more of a long shot unless his market completely collapses and he's forced to settle for a smaller deal. But if somehow they could pull it off, his shooting could make a big difference. Another name that has floated around is Malcolm Brogdon. On paper, Brogdon seems like a great fit. He's calm, steady, doesn't turn the ball over, and has the ability to give you solid scoring and playmaking off the bench. When healthy, he's the kind of player who can stabilize second units and bring a sense of control to the game. He's even had stretches in his career where he's been part of that exclusive 50-40-90 club, showing just how efficient he can be. But here's the catch: health. Brogdon has a long list of injuries, back problems, knee problems, elbow issues, you name it. He hasn't been able to string together multiple healthy seasons, and his games played total is always a concern. For a Warriors team that already has veterans with miles on their bodies and players who have dealt with their share of injuries, adding another uncertainty into the mix feels risky. It also brings up the question of role. How much opportunity would Brogdon even get in Golden State? Between Steph, Draymond, Jimmy Butler now in the fold, Podziemski handling the ball more, and Melton expected to play a role, there are already plenty of hands on the basketball. Would Brogdon be happy taking a reduced role? Would the Warriors be getting enough out of him to justify the risk of his injury history? It feels like one of those signings that looks good on paper, but could create more problems than it solves if things don't break right. And then there's the sentimental option, Seth Curry. The younger Curry brother has bounced around the league for years, making a career as a reliable shooter and a positive locker room guy. The idea of pairing him with Steph has always been a fun thought experiment, and for the first time, there's a real opportunity to make it happen. He wouldn't be brought in to play heavy minutes or be a major rotation piece, but as a back-end roster guy who can hit shots and keep morale high, it's not the worst idea. He has always been a liability defensively, and that's probably why he's still a free agent right now. But sometimes fit isn't just about X's and O's. Sometimes it's about chemistry, about adding the right personality, and about finding ways to keep your star player engaged and happy. Having his brother in the locker room might not move the needle on the court, but it could still pay dividends. All of this circles back to the reality of where the Warriors are. They're trying to squeeze everything they can out of Steph's window, but they're also not willing to sacrifice the future for a quick fix. Every move they've made this offseason reflects that. They've prioritized cost-effective veterans, leaned into development, and refused to trade their young core unless it's for something that clearly changes the trajectory of the team. That's why Kuminga's fate matters so much, and that's why Podziemski's growth is being talked about in the same breath as free agency. The two situations are connected. Until one is resolved, the other can't fully move forward. And this brings us to Al Horford again. His signing isn't just about what he does on the court. It's about leadership, stability, and presence. The rest of the moves, like Melton and Payton, are all about fortifying the defense and making sure the team has enough bodies to throw at opposing guards. It's not flashy, but it's necessary. The Warriors aren't going to out-talent teams in the West anymore. They have to outsmart them, outwork them, and rely on their system. That's been their formula before, and it still has value, but the margin for error is smaller now. Every free agent signing, every roster spot, every role has to hit just right. So when fans debate whether the Warriors should chase someone like Brogdon or Beasley or roll the dice on Seth Curry, it's not just idle chatter. These decisions could be the difference between hanging around the play-in picture or making a legitimate run. And that's why the front office is moving carefully. They know they don't have room for mistakes, and they know that this year could very well define the trajectory of the franchise for years to come. Before we continue, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss any exclusive Dubs updates. Let's keep going. In the latest whirlwind surrounding the Golden State Warriors, whispers are intensifying about the apparent rift between head coach Steve Kerr and one of the team's key players, a situation that has become the subject of heated speculation among fans and analysts alike. Sources close to the organization suggest that the tension has been brewing for several months, stemming from disagreements over playing style, rotations, and on-court decision-making. Steve Kerr, widely regarded as a brilliant strategist and a calm, level-headed leader, reportedly reached a point of frustration that has never been publicly disclosed until now. The statement allegedly made by KERR, "He doesn't play with me anymore," has sent shockwaves through the basketball community, igniting debates about the future of both the player and the team. Insiders hint that this is more than a momentary flare-up. It may represent a fundamental clash of philosophy between a coach determined to maintain a cohesive system and a player seeking to assert individual influence. Rumors are circulating that the locker room environment has been affected, with teammates reportedly navigating the tension cautiously, mindful of both the team's public image and the delicate balance that has propelled the Warriors to multiple championships. Analysts are already speculating on whether this confrontation could have ripple effects, not only for the current season, but for the franchise's long-term planning, including trade considerations and contract negotiations that might be influenced by this simmering conflict. The impact of KERR's statement, if verified, could extend far beyond the immediate dynamics of the Warriors roster. Basketball insiders suggest that such declarations from a coach of KERR's caliber are rarely made lightly, indicating a serious breakdown in communication that may have persisted behind closed doors. The player involved, whose identity remains under wraps amid swirling conjecture, is reportedly a high-impact contributor whose performance has been instrumental in the team's previous successes. Speculation has risen that the disagreement may involve issues such as shot selection, defensive assignments, or adherence to the team's strategic framework, all of which are points of contention that can escalate quietly but profoundly. The broader NBA community is observing this situation with keen interest, as any public acknowledgement of discord between a star player and a legendary coach carries significant implications for league narratives and fan engagement. Commentators are debating whether this tension could manifest in altered playing time, changes to starting lineups, or even off-court measures to mediate the conflict. The rumblings have intensified social media chatter, with fans dissecting past games, body language on the bench, and post-game interviews for signs of friction, creating a sense of intrigue that borders on sensationalism. This evolving storyline underscores the delicate balance in professional sports between individual talent, team cohesion, and leadership authority, highlighting how a single statement can ignite speculation and reshape perceptions across a global audience. While the Warriors have historically thrived under KERR's meticulous guidance, the current situation introduces a layer of uncertainty that has prompted analysts to reassess assumptions about team chemistry. Experts have begun to explore whether the alleged declaration signifies a temporary emotional response or a deeper, structural conflict that could influence strategic decisions throughout the season. Rumors suggest that internal meetings have been convened to address the tension, with assistant coaches and management potentially mediating discussions aimed at preventing further escalation. Speculation has also emerged regarding the potential influence of agents, family members, and other external advisors who might play a role in shaping the player's response to the reported statement. Fans have latched onto subtle indicators, from sideline expressions to post-practice interviews, interpreting them as either confirmation or contradiction of the rumored discord, which has only fueled the narrative. Sports columnists are drawing parallels with historical examples of high-profile coach-player disputes, highlighting both the challenges and potential resolutions that have unfolded in similar scenarios. The evolving situation raises fundamental questions about leadership, communication, and the management of superstar personalities in modern professional basketball, illustrating the intricate interplay of authority, ego, and performance expectations that define the upper echelons of the sport. As the saga unfolds, each passing day seems to add another layer of intrigue, keeping fans, pundits, and commentators alike riveted by the possibility of dramatic developments. Amid the swirling rumors, the Warriors organization faces a delicate balancing act, attempting to maintain public confidence while internally navigating a potentially volatile relationship. Sources indicate that the front office may be weighing multiple contingency plans, ranging from roster adjustments to strategic conversations aimed at reconciling the perceived differences between coach and player. The media has intensified its scrutiny, with sports networks and podcasts dissecting every nuance of interactions during games, practice sessions, and press conferences, further amplifying the sense of urgency surrounding the situation. As the situation continues to unfold, the broader implications for the NBA ecosystem are becoming increasingly apparent. Rival teams and league observers are reportedly monitoring the developments closely, analyzing potential strategic advantages that might emerge if the Warriors' internal dynamics are disrupted. Trade rumors, contract renegotiations, and even shifts in player market value are all being speculated upon as insiders attempt to gauge how this rumored rift could influence broader league trends. Sports analysts have noted that public disputes of this nature, while potentially destabilizing in the short term, can sometimes catalyze important conversations about team culture, leadership, and accountability. Fans are avidly following every detail, from body language captured on broadcast footage to cryptic social media posts, each interpreted as a potential clue to the underlying situation. While the exact consequences remain uncertain, one thing is clear. A single statement attributed to Steve Kerr has ignited a storm of discussion, analysis, and speculation that transcends the normal rhythms of a basketball season. The narrative illustrates how professional sports operate not only as a competitive arena, but also as a theater of personalities, power, and public perception, where rumors can rapidly transform into perceived truths. As whispers turn into headlines, the basketball world braces for what may be a pivotal moment in the careers of both a storied coach and a high-profile player, with consequences that could resonate far beyond the immediate confines of the Warriors organization. Stay updated exclusively with the latest Dub Nation news. Subscribe to our channel and hit the like button to keep getting daily updates on the Warriors. Don't forget to share your thoughts in the comments. Your input is essential for the Dubs community. Stay tuned for the next video.